finds it Hunter. And Virginia with the all-time turnaround title.
Good morning, Wahoo Nation. That preview, it didn't want to stop. It wanted to keep running because we all love that championship moment. I hope you have your coffee and your championship mug. I've got mine. I'm sure Val has his because it is time to wake up and get ready for our game today with Pitt. All right, hang on. We're having all kinds of stupid technical stuff here. There. Things deciding to play in the background and things not wanting to stop. The video is trying to upstage us, but we're not going to let that happen. So I hope you guys are ready for Pitt. Pitt's coming in. They're going to be ready for us. I'm Seattle Hoo. I'm our producer and the host of the Wahoo Wakeup. And with me today is our podcast host, Val Prochaska. Morning, Val.
It's good to be here. Always fun to talk Wahoo's basketball. So, because Pitt will be an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward to the game. So, of course, Pitt's coming off doing us a big favor. Having shellacked Virginia Tech for us to take the Hokies back down. So, for one night last week, we were all Pitt fans.
Yeah, it was a crazy game. I was kind of watching it, a condensed version this morning, getting ready for this, and it was a very close game until the last 6 minutes, and then Pitt went on a little run, hit a couple threes, and put it away. But Keve Aluma was unbelievable in that game. 30 points, continued to get to the free throw line. He was 4 for 7 from 3. So in the last 2 games, he is 6 for 9 from the 3-point line, which is
going 2 for 13 the beginning of this.
He was 1 for 15 in ACC play coming into our game.
Yeah,
and in 2 games now he's 6 for 9. It totally changes things. And he's number 2 in Ken Palm's ACC Player of the Year rankings. Now, Ken Palm's Player of the Year system has some problems, considering that Justin Champagnie is not one of the top 5 in his, and neither is Alvarado. So clearly,
then who are the top 5?
Yeah, it's Jay Huff, and then Keve Aluma, and I know Hauser is in there, and let's see. It's Jay Huff, Keve Aluma, Carlik Jones, Sam Hauser, and Amir Sims. And that's as of today.
Yeah.
That's just not.
Sims ain't had the season that Champagnie is having, and I mean, I love Amir Sims.
Yeah.
He's a shell of what I expected for him this season, and Champagnie's playing the bruiser role that I was kind of expecting.
Yeah.
Out of Amir Sims. So
it's been a crazy week in the ACC since our podcast, the Who cast on Monday, in which I proclaimed that Duke and North Carolina were back. Watch out, ACC, and Virginia Tech was here to stay, and all that. And we previewed the NC State game, and we previewed UVA versus Louisville, and now here we are talking about UVA versus Pitt, which is something that's never happened in the ACC before this season, where your opponent gets changed. But it's the time of COVID. Both FSU and Louisville had COVID pauses this week, and so Pitt didn't have an opponent. We didn't have an opponent, and it happened early enough that everybody was able to make the switch, and so now we're playing Pitt.
Which is great, because that means that we've got a later open date, which we hadn't had. So
very likely we'll play Louisville.
Yeah. So this is a way to save Louisville. So I mean, I'm ecstatic that we got Pitt able to fill in. So
yeah. So Pitt, they had lost 3 in a row, and they turned it around with a shellacking of Virginia Tech, who was probably the hottest team in the ACC at the time. Duke and North Carolina had been surging, just surging up the table. And then they both took bad losses. I mean, bad losses. Which one lost to Clemson?
UNC lost to Clemson, only putting 50 points up on the board. And this was a Clemson team that had lost 4 in a row since we beat them.
Yeah. And been giving up 80 points a game.
Yeah. And then Duke goes down to Miami, which has to be, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen Miami yet, but
they're terrible. They were 2-9 in the ACC before that game.
Yeah. So then they up their resume against Duke, so those are the teams that are, those are the games that teams are supposed to win. And we were supposed to beat Tech, and obviously doesn't happen. That's why you play the games.
Yeah, see, I don't think us supposed to beat Tech belongs in the same category as those other two games.
No, absolutely not.
Not at all.
Absolutely not. But,
had we lost NC State Wednesday night, that would have been in the same category.
Sure. This NC State team is not good. I mean, without Devin Daniels, it's just that team is a shell of itself.
Yeah, the thing is that game it illustrates one of the biggest reasons I'm worried about this game, because NC State, they did not play NC State basketball. Like, they weren't stupid. They weren't careless. They didn't turn it over a lot. They played, they weren't indifferent to defense.
No, not at all.
They executed in the half court. That's just, those things are not the hallmarks of NC State basketball. Those, and so it's like everybody plays smart against us. And so if one of the weaknesses of a team on your scouting report tends to be careless, tends to play stupid, turns the ball over a lot, if that's part of your scouting report on a team, you got to be cautious with applying that to this game, because that team is probably going to play their smartest basketball of the season.
Yeah, because they have to. Because everybody knows what Bennett ball is. We're going to be deliberate. We're going to control the pace. We're going to move, and so that's what they've been drilling them on all week. So that's a great observation.
Yeah,
we're going to get them holding, and then of course some of our turnovers were they're the kind of things that I'm expecting from other people. I mean,
right.
We had some just horrendous passes, and at least twice the announcers go, "What was Reese Beekman thinking?" and "What was Marcel thinking?" Which is the same reaction you and I had as we were watching. Like, who are you throwing it to? I mean, it's one thing when you make a bad pass trying to create something. It's another thing when you're just kind of lazily whipping it around the top of the key and turnovers that way.
To me, it was not. We didn't react well to the defensive pressure. They were putting pressure on the ball, and they're denying one pass away, and they're denying the other guard. When one guard had the ball, they were denying the other guard and forcing us to look elsewhere. And guys like Marcel and Beekman, they didn't make that, they didn't handle that very well. So, but Trey Murphy saved us, and that'll segue into our next section, which is the Who Spotlight. I apologize today. I don't have video for a couple reasons. One, time, and two, been having an issue with YouTube. They detect copyrighted material. So a lot of times when I play these videos, YouTube is shutting down the live feed because it's doing a copyright violation. It's bullshit. It is bullshit, but it's so I didn't want to put together something about Murphy and then have it shut down our live feed. I think you can play like one or two little clips, but beyond that, like, I ended the show last week with last season's highlight video of the Virginia Tech game, and I got an email. Apparently, YouTube, they shut down the live stream at that point, and it wasn't too big a deal because it was the end of the show, but I don't want that to happen in the middle of the show, so I'm minimizing the amount of video. I'm going to do some research on it and see how to get around it. Because there is copyright, there is this thing called fair use. Because copyright is supposed to foster creativity and the sharing of ideas and stuff. It's not supposed to shut you down from sharing ideas. So, YouTube, it's, in my opinion, it's an egregious violation of the fair use doctrine, but it is what it is. But anyway, Trey Murphy, he's having a great season overall. His offensive rating overall is 135.5, which is amazing. And in ACC play, it's 127.7, which is good for third in the conference. Among all conference players, he's number 3. He's shooting 49% from the three-point line overall, and then 45.5% in ACC play. And he's got the second highest volume on the team. Only Sam Hauser's taken more threes. And in ACC play particularly, he's been pretty high volume. Like he took 10 shots the other night, went 4 for 10. It wasn't the last game, but I think it was against Syracuse. So he's scoring 11.3 points per game in double figures. Coming off a big game against NC State where he had 18 points. The big thing for me there was 6 for 6 from the free throw line. He got to the free throw line. Then he had 5 rebounds, which was a little bit less than he's had the last couple games, but he had a couple big ones down the stretch.
Oh, they were huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, it's one thing, if you're getting the rebound because there's nobody there, but those 2 that he had, one on the defensive end after a free throw and one on the offensive end. I mean, he was sandwiched by people, and it was just one of those, he wanted it more than anybody else. And we haven't had a whole lot of rebounders who are, we're going to go up and win this ball.
Even bigger to me was when he went to the floor and won the ball. That's something we haven't done much of this year.
No, that was in the first half, and that was one heck of a scrum. I mean, That was a rugby scrum. I mean, I don't know if he got called that for his rebound, but that was a loose ball that he then also very nicely, sat up and got the ball out of his hands quickly. Sometimes, you get there, travel.
No, it was a great play.
He spun around beautifully. It's like he practiced that thing. And
it
you're right,
really stuck out to me because I had noticed we haven't been getting many of those.
Mm-mm.
We're not winning 50-50 balls like we have in the past. There hasn't been anyone like Isaiah Wilkins or Ty Jerome who's out there, or Braxton Key, who's just out there laying out, determined to get that fucking ball and not let anybody else get it. We just haven't had that, and Trey showed that for the first time there. So I hope we see more of that because we need to see more of that. We're coming up against better teams now. We're coming up against teams that are better on the offensive boards than we've played so far. We're number 1 in the conference, not giving up offensive rebounds, but we haven't played the best offensive rebounding teams. We're going to see some of that today. Pitt, a lot of what they do is off offensive rebounds. But anyway, back to Trey Murphy. He had that big game. His last 3 games, he's been averaging 6 rebounds per game, which has been important. And it's mostly on the defensive boards because up until now, rebounding has been a weakness of his. His defensive rebounding percentage is only 12.7, which is a little low. Even when you've got 2 primary rebounders like Jay Huff and Sam Hauser, who are both over 20%, you want to see your 6'9" forward get a little higher than 12.7% on the defensive boards. So to see that against NC State was a very good sign.
Yeah.
And then a couple of his other weaknesses that he's shown, one is his defense off the ball continues to be an adventure. Really struggled against Tech on that. They victimized him and Hauser again off the ball. Our forward defense is a concern. Now Trey, his defense on the ball has been good and at times sensational. I think he does better against guards than he does against forwards, bigger guys with his on-ball defense. And then his ball handling, I think the Tech game and the NC State game again, they really showed that if you pressure on a perimeter, it shows the weaknesses in Trey's ball handling. You can see why he wasn't an ACC player as a 6'4" shooting guard, because even as a 6'9" wing forward, the ball handling is kind of suspect, and it makes his best role a spot up shooter out on the wings.
Fortunately, though, he knows that he's not a good dribbler, and so he's not trying a whole lot. And if that's something you don't do, then fine. He's not going to be the guy bringing it up the court. He's not going to be your third guy trying to, break a press. I've been impressed just with Sam Hauser bringing the ball up the
Yeah.
court.
And I'm not,
Yeah.
the ball handling, I'm not talking about bringing it up or breaking a press. I'm talking about in the half court in the offense, being able to drive, put the ball on the floor and drive, create plays, being able to, beat half court pressure. He's not, he can hit the baseline. If the baseline is left open, he can make that baseline drive. But, that's pretty much it for him for driving against defense. What he did extremely well and has done extremely well is cut without the ball. Some of those backdoor cuts that he made, were fantastic. And Brian Geisinger, who we had on the podcast, that look him up on Twitter. Everybody, he did another great article on Virginia where he highlighted what we did against NC State and how we were running some of the adjustments that we made. And Murphy, those slam dunks that he had, was an adjustment that we made to their adjustment, to our adjustment, to what they were doing. And a really, really good article that shows the chess game that can happen between teams. So
yeah, well, and the thing is Jay Hupp's now looking for that,
mm-hmm.
and it is kind of impressive. I mean, Jay's got the size and he's got the vision, and I mean, he's found him 4 times in the last 2 games,
and that's going to be big today.
It is, and especially against Pitt, because we want to pin those their bigs down, and if these guys are freer to come up and move, then that's going to affect. Then it clogs up that sort of middle third where we're trying to do this triangle thing, and I want to see him stuck more on the baseline. To give Hauser and Huff more time, more freedom to move, because
and Murphy can be big on that. So we need to watch Trey Murphy. I think offensively he's going to be important, but defensively he's going to have a huge challenge. When he's defensively guarding on the wing, he's going to be guarding Audis Toney, who is smaller but very physical and a very downhill player, aggressive offensive player. He's like 6'6", about 210, can shoot the 3. So he's a tough cover. It's going to be very difficult for Trey. And then we might have to see Trey taking on Justin Champagny some. So that's going to be, Trey that's why he's got the spotlight today, because it'll be very important on both sides of the ball. So,
yeah.
So a little bit about Pitt. Right now they're 6th in the ACC. Excuse me. They're tied with Duke for 5th at 5-4. They've kind of had a roller coaster season. They lost 3 games in a row.
Roller coaster.
Yeah, they lost 3 games in a row before beating Tech. So they were, They were like 4-1.
Yeah. Well, they started out
4-0. No. I don't know.
They lost their very first game to something like San Francisco, but then they beat the guys they were supposed to. Beat Duke. Started out 8-2. Then they had some pausing of their own.
Okay.
And then they'd looked okay, and then just inexplicably, lost to Notre Dame by 26 points. They lost to Wake, which sucks. I mean, Wake was a bucket or something. But if you're losing, and then they lost to UNC, which again was one of those games that made you think UNC was back.
Right.
But losing to Wake and Notre Dame on the trot, that's bad.
Yeah.
So the thinking was, that Capel tried to get Xavier Johnson, who's their all everything, maybe their most assertive player. He's the guy who drives everything. So Xavier Johnson, he benched him. Xavier Johnson was according to St. Louis Who, was his first recruit, and so he's been starting since minute 1. And Capel benched him, maybe like Kihei was benched earlier in the season. But not only did he bench Johnson, he also benched Ithiel Horton. And, both those guys coming off the bench combined for something like 47 points. against Tech, and so maybe they were obviously starters. They're better players, but Capel got their attention and fired them up, and
Yeah,
as
he
we
had
all
to because
know,
they weren't playing very well.
no, I
And
mean,
now Johnson had a sensational game.
so they beat a team that was riding high on us. So
Hmm.
they are the definition of of the ACC roller coaster.
Yeah, Ken Palm rankings for Pitt, they're number 78. So, they have the capability of being better than that, but they also have the capability of being worse than that. They're very consistent on both sides of the ball. Their offense is number 82 and their defense is number 80. In Ken Palm, in the ACC, they have the number 6 offense and the number 8 defense. So their offense is a little bit better than their defense. As far as scheme, what they're going to play, kind of think 1990s Duke. That's what Capel wants to play. Where defensively they're primarily man to man.
Duke, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're primarily a man to man team where they're going to pressure the perimeter. They're going to pressure up on shooters. They're going to pressure passing lanes and try to get turnovers. And then offensively, they will play zone. They did play some 2-3 zone against Tech when Aluma was killing them, and Aluma and Mutz were killing them with the high-low game. So they tried some zone. It didn't last very long. It's interesting that they like to pressure out on the perimeter and they're trying to force turnovers, but their defense is 13th in the conference at generating turnovers. So it's what they want to do, but they haven't been very good at it. And they don't block many shots, and they've been giving up a lot of 2-point baskets. So, what does that say? Get it inside. And then offensively, they're not an efficient offense. They don't shoot the ball very well at all. They're 13th in the conference shooting percentage, but where they're going to get you, they're first in the conference at free throw rate. Their free throw rate is 35.9, which is huge. That's going to be a big problem for us.
And that those free throw shooting numbers, they're across the board. They've got 5 or 6 guys who can get to the
and they're
line.
5th in the conference in offensive rebounding percentage.
And so I'm looking back at like the Notre Dame games. Those our 2 Notre Dame games were close only because Notre Dame went to the line 20 times a game.
Now, interestingly enough, we're 3rd in the ACC at free throw rate defense.
Okay.
And yet we tend to give up. Tech got to the line. Tech was one of the worst teams in the conference at getting to the free throw line. We're one of the best teams in the conference at not allowing teams to get to the free throw line, and yet they had a parade to the free throw line in the second half. Like you said, Notre Dame, Notre Dame's offense, their offensive free throw rate is 9. They're 9th in the conference, which is middle of the pack, and yet they paraded to the line against us. So it's another area where the aggregate season statistics have to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Well, this is the worry for me is this, and if I'm jumping the gun on the prognosis, it's if these guys go to the line 20 times, it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
Also because it'll mean that Huffle have inevitably got into foul trouble, and we're seeing some awfully soft calls on Huff.
Yeah, 2 clean blocks Wednesday night that were called fouls.
Oh,
the replay, it wasn't even close. They were so clean. They were so clean. Mr. Clean wouldn't have had anything to do.
Sure.
They were godly blocks.
Yeah. So it's the free throws. The free throws worry me. This is an efficient team getting there, and they're very capable of hitting 90% of their free throws as a team. When they get to the line. I mean, we were kind of lucky, down the stretch. DJ Funderburk, for North NC State, who is a really good free throw shooting big man, went for a pair of 1-and-1s and missed the front half of them. And that was well out. I mean, he's a good free throw shooter, and so we benefited from that. And so I'm worried about their free throw shooting.
Yeah. All right. The players to watch for Pitt, obviously Justin Champagny. He's an ACC Player of the Year candidate. He's averaging just under 20 points a game and over 12 rebounds a game. He had 31 points and 5 blocks against Duke a couple weeks ago. So he's a very good weak side shot blocker. I'll try to show you a little bit of him while we talk about him. And he can do everything. He shoots the three. He's over 40% from the three-point line in ACC play. He gets to the rim. He gets to the free throw line a lot. He is a player who will take over a game by himself. And then the other thing that I noticed on this video, it almost shows off Xavier Johnson more than it shows off Justin Champagnie, because Johnson is making a lot of those plays for Champagnie with his drives. And
well, I think Johnson, from last year, this is Xavier Johnson's team. I think he's the most important player on the team if he's not having the best season. He's the guy who drives the tempo, sets the tone. So
and he had a huge game against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
After that benching, 32 points, hit threes. He still had, I think, 7 assists, a bunch of rebounds, steals. He was getting into the lane. And, last year he gave us a lot of trouble. Last year we had that big lead, and then we lost all of it. And we're very lucky to win that game. And a lot of it was Xavier Johnson.
I like him.
Kihei was dominating the game early, and then Johnson took it over from him, including that horrendous steal. If you remember, Kihei dribbling over the timeline. And then,
I blocked that out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be thinking of that.
So those guys, Champagnie and Johnson, they're capable of dropping 60 on you between the two of them. And they work well together because Champagnie is good at that corner three. And, when Johnson breaks down the defense. And Johnson, when he gets the ball in transition, he's going to the rim. It doesn't matter how many defenders are back. You can have all 5 guys standing around that little charge arc, and he's going to the rim. And then, the other 2 guys we talked about already to watch, Dees Toney and Ethiel Horton are the other perimeter players. If Horton gets hot from 3, like he did against Tech, it's a huge problem. And then Toney's a huge problem. And then their 5th player, major player, is their big man, Kareem Abdul-Koulibaly. He's a sophomore who I thought he was like 6'11". He looks like 6'11" out there, and he plays like a 6'11" plotter, but he's 6'8". And he's going to be matched up. That's going to be Huff's primary matchup. And that's one that we need to exploit. Koulibaly, he doesn't block a lot of shots, but he's good on the boards, offensive boards. He's good. He's efficient when he does get the ball. He's kind of a low usage player, but he's efficient. And he can hurt you if you're not careful. So they've got talent. They've got a lot of talent. And they can hurt us. There's a few ways they can hurt us. Val, we talked about the fouls. That's one big way. If we turn the ball over against them, they can hurt us in transition. And they've done it. They did it to Tech when they put that game away. They did it to us last year. And that's something that we cannot allow. And then the other way they can hurt us is with, I call it hero ball. I'm not the only one who calls it that, but hero ball. They have 2 guys who can just play hero ball and just beat you. And who will play hero ball. Xavier Johnson's a hero ball player. That's his game. And, he can be very good at it. He can hero ball his team out of the game, or he can hero ball his team in the game. Champagnie is much less likely to hero ball the team out of the game. There's been I've not seen any downside to his hero ball games. Because a lot of it he does on defense, blocking shots, making, anticipating plays and making steals and getting rebounds and then turning them into offense. So, this is a game where there's 2 guys who could just take the ball on their own and beat us, which is something. And our defense is a huge concern. Our forward defense is still the big weakness. Aluma I mean, Luma's killing everybody now. He had 30 points against Pitt, but
Jericho Helms,
yeah, Helms, Hauser they're picking on Hauser and Champagne against Hauser. That's
it's gonna be bad. I'm actually hoping we see McCoy get some real minutes.
ugh.
Um,
That's
you know,
not gonna that's not gonna
well,
save us.
well, I think he can play him defensively better than Hauser. And hopefully we've got
But
some
he's
other
not gonna give
options.
us anything on the offensive end.
That's all right. We've got
Because Champagne, as great as he is, he's another guy who will have defensive lapses. So Hauser should be able to exploit him on the other side. So that kind of gets us into how we can hurt them. And I have two things. One is discipline. Be disciplined. Play a good positional pack line defense. Don't overhelp. Don't let them penetrate. Box out on the boards. Don't let them get offensive rebounds. And then on offense, run our stuff. Be careful with the ball. Take advantage of their backcourt or their heavy perimeter pressure with some backdoor cuts like we saw Trey Murphy do. We've seen Reese Beekman do. And then the other thing that I picked up on was the Huff-Hauser high-low game. Aluma and Mutz shredded them with the high-low game. And, their defense, they give up a lot of twos. They can be beaten inside. They don't block a lot of shots. They're short. Champagne is 6'6". Coulibaly is 6'8". And Champagne can get a little inattentive on defense. So that we should be able to hurt them with the Huff-Hauser high-low game. Of course, I thought posting up against Virginia Tech was a way we could hurt them, and Hauser gave us nothing in the post in that game.
Sure.
So, there's only so far you can take that.
Okay.
So, I guess that brings us to our prognosis for this game. How do you feel about it? It is a home game. Pitt's coming into the JPJ.
Well, they played 5 of their last 6 games at home, so quite the stretch. Travel's hard. It's just more difficult. I don't know what the schedules are, but I'm betting Pitt's on the road right now. It's just harder to get there. I think home field advantage maybe matters more. Wherever these guys are, they're being isolated, and as soon as they step off the bus, it's just a lot harder. So we've got them at home, and I feel better about that. So I'm worried about free throws. I think it's going to come down to the free throw battle. I'm not expecting us to go to the line 22 times. That was certainly an aberration. But I think if we can keep them in the low teens, then I'm feeling more confident about this
All right. Yeah, I'm worried about it, to be frank. I'm very worried about this game for a couple reasons. One, everybody plays smart against us. Everybody. Yeah. NC State is one of the dumbest teams in college basketball, and they played a very smart, disciplined game against us. And so it was a game that went down to the wire, and the whistle played a big role in that game where, for a while the whistle was going their way. And then at the end, the whistle went our way. It got to be 8 fouls against us and 5 against them. And the next thing I knew, they had 10 fouls and we still had 8.
Yeah.
And that had a big difference. And so, one of the problems with Pitt basketball is they can play dumb. They can get out of control. They can try to do too much. They can throw the ball away. They can, be inattentive on defense and all that. And a lot of that is just attention and focus kind of stuff. Where, if I like to talk about teams that they have the capability in any particular game to play very smart, focused, disciplined basketball. They just usually don't. And if they come in and they play smart, focused, disciplined basketball against you, they're a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Pitt is one of those teams. And if they have very good players, and if they come in and they're laser focused and on top of their mental game, they can beat us. And if we're not on the top of our mental game, they can beat us badly. Look at what Virginia Tech did to us. Look at how badly we got beat. We've been getting beaten at times by teams. That can happen today if we're not on the top of our mental game. And so I'm worried about that tendency. I'm worried about the whistle. Forget the statistics that, we don't foul a lot. We've had some games where the other team has been able to get to the free throw line repeatedly against us. And, it's caused us problems. And Pitt is one of those teams. They're going to attack the rim, and they're going to attack the defender. They're not going to shy away from contact. They're going in to get contact and get to the rim. And
Sure.
Teams that are like that, they can give us a lot of trouble. So I'm concerned about that. The other thing I'm concerned about is our backcourt ball handling. It still is substandard. I was talking up Casey Morsell in the last 2 games. He's just been bad. Again, Reese was bad against NC State at times handling the ball. Trey, we've talked about his ball handling issues. Thomas Woldetensai has the last few games has not looked like an ACC caliber player. So we're kind of in the backcourt. It's kind of coming down again to Kihei and our front court. So we at times we've been kind of a split personality team this year, where part of the time we're the normal Tony Bennett team that doesn't turn the ball over. And then at other times we revert back to last year's team that was one of the worst teams in the ACC at turning the ball over. Which one of us is going to be there today? And can we keep the Bennett ball team the whole game? Last year against Pitt, it really bothers me. They came back on us, like Syracuse has come back on us with pressure and causing a lot of turnovers, and we cannot let them do that. So our backcourt ball handling is a big concern of mine. And the other thing that's a huge concern of mine in this game is there's a couple of matchups that are extremely concerning. One is Xavier Johnson against Kihei. Kihei did a great job against him for most of the game last year, but not in those last 6 minutes. In those last 6 minutes, Johnson dominated him. If Johnson plays the way he did against Virginia Tech, it's going to be a very difficult matchup for Kihei, because Johnson, he can pull up and pop the 3 over Kihei, or he can take him to the basket. If that's the kind of player, think Jay Heath last year. It's going to be a very difficult matchup for Kihei, and we need to have good Kihei. We cannot have bad Kihei. If we have bad Kihei, we're toast. And then the other matchup is Champagny against Hauser. That, to me, it's a terrible mismatch when they have the ball. And Champagny against Murphy is a terrible mismatch when they have the ball. So the key is going to be, can we make them pay on the other side? Can Hauser take advantage of Champagny? If you can't do that, we're toast. So I'm worried about this game. Apparently the Vegas line and Ken Palm and Bart Torvik, they all have this being a double-digit UVA win. We're supposed to win by 11 or 12. I would say bollocks. Balls to that. No. This is going to be a very close game. It's going to be a battle. And
it seems to me that the 6 minute mark and the left in the game seems to be the ACC's witching hour, and it ain't just us. But there have been a lot of games that have been really kind of close, going 6 minutes down, and then all of a sudden, somebody starts, shooting blanks.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly happened to us. We were on the negative side against Tech, and then that 6 minute witching hour hit against
NC State.
State. Now, the one thing that I did notice was that about that 6 minute, did you notice that we started doubling everything in the post?
Right.
Relatively late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Huff started hedging higher. After an entire season with Huff pretty much not hedging, he started hedging. And, I think teams kind of forget that when you've got a long, lanky 7'1" guy who's doing your hedge, it's hard to get around him. So I liked that change against NC State, and I think it's what turned it for us, because then we had 2 steals, they had 2 turnovers in about 3.5 minutes,
right.
and that's when we broke the end, including the ball that just kind of hit Huff in the hands, But when Huff's recording steals, that's a good thing. So, the other thing I think is that it's going to turn on, what are the chess moves that the coaches make, and Capel's never seemed to me to be a genius at the X's and O's. So, I think we have a slight advantage there. I mean, I think
more than slight.
Yeah,
we have a big advantage there. Look, Tony's in-game tactical adjustments are top notch, and you saw it. Look, you just brought up one big thing: the change to doubling the post and changing the hedge. That's one example. On the offensive end, Brian Geisinger's article that I talked about earlier goes through the kinds of adjustments that Tony made, and late it paid off. And like I said before, teams can come in and they can hurt us one way, but are they going to be able to hurt us a second way and a third way as the game moves on? If they run out of moves, and because Tony forces you to make a lot of moves, when he sees something working, he's going to move to take that away, and you're going to have to be able to come up with something else. And I love the way the system has changed with the post double. It used to be we doubled the post all the time. Teams started to handle it very well and hurt us with it, and we got a little bit better, talent wise. So we stopped doubling the post automatically. We rarely double the post, and we started doing it tactically, situationally, and it works way better because teams, they were coming in very prepared for it.
Yeah,
and now they don't, and they're not.
Well, when you have a pattern offense like the sides and even continuity ball spring, you can work on that. And when you know what the defense that we're going to throw at you is,
right,
it does allow you to start it.
And the hedge is the same way. We were in an automatic hard hedge all the time, and it's still what he wants to do, and I still like it. And and we've gotten away from it this year because our off-ball defense has been so bad. We can't afford to have Jay out there hard hedging. And look, in the past, we've gone away from the hard hedge because the big man wasn't very good at the hedge. Mike Tobey, Jay Huff last year are two really good examples of that adjustment. This time, the move away from the hard hedge wasn't because of the hedger. It was because of the rotations. The rotations weren't there, and we were getting killed on those rotations. And so we couldn't afford to have Huff out at midcourt because teams were just killing us badly in the back. Huff is a good hedger, and when our rotations are there, we can use it as a weapon. And again, as with the doubling the post, when you don't do it all game, and teams are prepared to play that way, when you suddenly throw it at them, it can throw them off, kind of like Syracuse with the press. People wonder, why don't they press all the time? Why don't they press all the time? Well, if they press all the time, it wouldn't work as well because teams would be prepared for it. When they throw it on you, it's a jarring change, and it throws you out of your rhythm. And so that could be a big factor today, something like that.
Sure.
Jay Huff he's got to be a positive for us. He's got a 6'8" guy who's on him. He's got to be able to work out there at the 3-point line, and not just as a passer. He needs to hit some threes, and we need to pick and roll. Pitt, according to Synergy, their efficiency defensively against let's take a look at it. Defensive Pitt Panthers. Yeah, their transition defense is poor. Their pick and roll ball handler defense is poor. Their cut defense is poor. So a lot of that is because they're pressuring out on the perimeter, so you can backdoor cut them. And their post-up defense is below average. Really, the only thing that they're very good, efficient defending is the spot up. They are actually excellent in Synergy rankings defending against the spot up. So,
and that's what we do. We do an awful lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
as St. Louis said, we have to attack the basket. We have to get into the paint. We can't try to be a spot up shooting team. It's a tendency that we fall into that we have to break. So,
Yep.
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's going to come down to the free throw shooting battle. I mean, if I had to pick something right here, 6 hours before game time, I'm betting it's free throws. If
Mm-hmm.
they've got a 22-10 advantage on us, that'll be the 10, 12 points that will make the difference.
Mm-hmm.
If we have something more than that, if we have, for some reason, we have more than them, I think we're gonna win. I'm not afraid of this game per se. I still haven't. We're better than Pitt. Pitt's lost some stinkers, and we know what the weaknesses are on this Virginia team, but we know what our strengths are, and we've got several players who can that can be the secondary scorer, after Sam Hauser. So it just depends on which one of those guys shows up. I'm confident we're at home. I'm not gonna wouldn't bet money on a win.
Right.
Wouldn't bet Monopoly money on a win. But
I definitely, if I were going to put bets on this game, I would take the points.
yeah,
To
I think so.
me, Pitt getting the points would be my lock of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But we'll be here and see what happens after the fact. But
yeah, I'm going to be locked in on ESPN this afternoon. 1 o'clock our game, and then right after at 3 o'clock is Duke and Carolina, which should be a very, very interesting game.
everybody remember those are West Coast times.
That's right.
Said 1 o'clock. Like, I know I was just checking yesterday. I know I just looked. Those are West Coast times. It's 4 o'clock for those of us here on the East Coast. But yeah, it'll be a good afternoon of basketball. And I mean, so which who needs that win more, Duke or UNC?
Well, in order to really answer that, you have to know their upcoming schedules for the two teams. Carolina's 6-4, Duke is 5-4 right now, and just don't know. I mean, without knowing who they each play coming up.
I mean, usually Duke UNC rivalry game. It's one of the best matchups in college basketball over the last 40 years. They're playing for pride. They're playing for a 1-2, 1-3 ranking.
They're playing at Cameron today, so I'm going to give you an answer. Duke needs it more because it's their home game. So
yeah, and that's exactly where I came down on it as well.
Okay.
But each one of these teams is not a lock for the NCAA, and they've got a lot of work to do. And this is a match that everybody who's watching Duke and UNC struggle is going to be looking at this particular result more than they normally do. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see these two guys, these two teams, these two heavyweights knocking off against each other just to maybe still stay relevant to NCAA seeding considerations. So it's going to be an exciting game given that the stakes are wildly different than what they've been used to for a very, very, very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, it's a fascinating middle of the table matchup.
Mm-hmm. And it ain't been a fascinating middle end of the table lineup in my lifetime.
Not until the last few years.
Yeah.
All right. So there you have it. Thanks for joining us. Those of you who joined us, and go Hoos.
Go Hoos. It's always fun.
Yep.
Wahoo.
All right. Wahoo, everybody.